campus. But at the end of the day, it was very hard to um, really differentiate myself from other people. So I started to like in second year and third year, like volunteer with a lot of other organizations like Black Boys Code or go to different hackathons. Um, and then that's when I started to really, you know, try to build a presence and started applying for jobs and doing all of that. And then I got a internship at SAP, which is another, a German engineering company that has presence in Canada. Um, but that process was hard, like application, like crazy.
For just the
Send out.
internship.
Hmm?
For just the internship.
Yeah, so it was like sending out 80, 80 applications just to different companies on this thing called, so we have a co-op program at my university.
Mm.
Um, 80 applications to different companies across Vancouver, and I never get an interview for I only got an interview for three. Um, so that process, I think I waste a lot of time, just sending out cold applications, but I got interviews with you, and luckily I got the SAP one. After that, the next batch of application processes, because it's like, summer based kind of thing, because I have school during the year. So summer I want an internship because I believe that when you get an internship, it's much easier to get a real full-time job afterwards.
Mm.
That process, bro, was rough. Use this tool, I'm going to go through like from job to application thing later on, but let's just say I built up a LinkedIn presence because I really needed that. I think that the best way to get into the hands of the companies is try through their recruiters.
Right.
Build a relationship with the recruiters through LinkedIn. So I built up LinkedIn, got in touch, asked them like what do they see in interviews. Like it's nothing wrong if you reach out to a person who work at a company or or a recruiter to ask them like, hey, what kind of questions do you get? What kind of questions do they ask and stuff like that just to get better. That process was rough because I went to seven final round interview. Well, not final round, but like next, like past assessment stages, and I
Yeah.
failed all of them. So I Google, Airbnb,
Oh.
LinkedIn. I didn't interview with Microsoft at that time, but it's like I built relations with about 20 recruiters. But yeah, I got there seven LinkedIn, seven next round interviews and failed all of them. And yeah, that was kind of rough. And then I got involved with student politics. So I'm just trying, like, we're in Canada, so they were trying to evict black people.
Mm.
And I was doing that fight. So it's like balancing my tech industry stuff and then social activism and stuff. So it's kind of rough, but the whole application process there was really hard. But I have a formula that I preach, and that's here what I come to advocate for today. But at the end of the day, different people have their different styles. But I'll tell you, um, the style that I use,
Mm.
and hopefully people can learn from that if they decide to do it the same way. And my thing is a lot of wide variety of experiences because
Mm.
everybody going to have like two courses that they did, two projects that they did, but wide variety of experiences through some student leadership or volunteering or something that shows
Mm.
that you're passionate beyond um, just like the
Just
tech
a
stuff that you
code.
do. So yeah, so
So
that's
the so
something
the
that's what
so
I advocate for.
the activism piece definitely helped.
Yeah, exactly. So I use my fullness of my experience to bring um like show that kind of grounded, like
Mm.
average, not average, sorry, but more like
Wholesome
wholesome
and
experience, right? Because I'm not
mm.
a genius, and that's why I'm happy that you're saying demystifying because if I'm there, anybody can do it, and because I'm not no smart youth. So maybe another genius like he can do it, but not. I just try to bring everything. Cricket is on my resume because chances are there's another
It's
cricket
still on the resume.
always on my resume, right? So I'll show you guys that too, but it has to be because yeah, even reggae, just in case there's a say hey, my interests are soca, cricket, dancer. I mean reggae dancer. That's on my resume because I want just in the event that maybe some Indian or something that play cricket too, we can say oh you play cricket, let's have a conversation and then you break the ice. So that's how I gain my interviews and I really am an advocate of bringing your full experiences. And if they don't want you, then because of that, then chances are you wouldn't be happy with them anyway. So that's my
Has
take.
has that has
Hot
that
take.
ever has that ever happened before? Like they mention like the nuanced things on your resume during the
Yeah, so
interview. Yeah.
I've brought it up actually. So yeah, I play cricket or whatever, whatever. Like just start cause at the front you always have your script. I have my three minute blurb. Say, hey, I'm
Mm,
a Jamaican, blah blah blah. Got involved with Black student organizing and Black Boys Code and bringing new people in tech. I'm passionate about this and JavaScript, blah, 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 like just random hackathons that I've done. It changes depending on the interview that I'm doing, because
right.
it's like I want to fit the story around that company itself. So if like it's a lot of if it's cloud, any project that I did on the cloud, I would just say, okay, that's Microsoft, Google, Amazon, if I was ever interviewing for Amazon. Um, but um, I would bring those experiences there instead, versus a Lyft or Uber or another company like that. I would say,
Mm,
talk about some project that I did, using some maps feature, connecting people, some graph API stuff on, that I know that they use internally or so. So, do the research first and then talk about that experience through that.
mm. You think is the process generally similar amongst it when stacked together
I would
in terms
say,
of like yeah.
so usually you have like a code assessment online or something first, and then the because like my thing through the recruiter sends me the job offer, they look at my name, try to get me through the interview pipeline. That's what happens, because they get this bunch of application, but the people who the recruiters flag, they try to get them interviews as well, because the recruiters want a bonus or a lot of pay. So
Right.
the chances are they are incentivized to, if they think that you're a good candidate, they'll try
Mm,
to get you through the pipeline as well. So, like, first interview with the recruiter, maybe, or it's usually a conversation, not an interview, to be honest.
yeah.
Then the next stuff is code assessment. You usually pass it, even if you fail it. Sometimes you get interviews still because the recruiter really likes you. Um, and then you have, yeah, maybe an on-site, maybe one or two on-site. Some companies, um, uh, Microsoft has one day of on-site with four back-to-back interviews, which was very stressful, but that's how they did it, for
Oh,
example.
talk to me about the relationship between I guess the potential candidate and the recruiter some more. Like how does that work? And like what are the incentive structures that really probably force them to push you through and to get like the go ahead and the yes? Because they're
So
not doing it for
I'm
free.
a fan of LinkedIn, right? And
Uh-huh.
again, like if I am commenting on their stuff and we're building that relationship, because what I do, if I see that I want to apply for a job in 6 months,
Mm,
I looked Lyft recruiter, Google recruiter. Usually they're assigned to some, like, so in Jamaica or you Caribbean, they would say, okay, a Caribbean recruiter. I look up that
mm,
person, or if anybody that I know got in through that pipeline through Howard or a university or whatever, I would reach out to them and say, hey, do you know what the recruiter that comes and recruits on your campus is? Or the name, add them on LinkedIn, start interacting with the post from 6 months from prior. Say, hey, you want to go on a call? Chances are maybe they're going to call with you. But the point is that they see you, they know your name. So when they start looking for candidates,
mm,
you come to their mind first. And the incentive is that if you have a brand, yeah, if you're visible on LinkedIn, and stuff like that, chances are they will be like incentivized to come and talk to you. So like, usually I message them and say, hey, let's go on a call. I think I'm. Sometimes I say I'm in the process of interviewing with other companies. I want to know if um, your company would be something that I'm interested in as well. So it's like flipping
mm,
it to like show that, oh, I'm employable because I'm I'm interviewing with so many other people. Do you
yeah.
want me or not? Chances are, they say, oh, ooh, this guy's sounds as if he's not too nervous. He's willing to come into my inbox. It's not a cold reach out because we've been added each other from before, um, and then they would take the conversation and take the call, and it would just goes from there.
And then afterwards, what the recruiter reaches back out to you. If
Yeah, and say, hey, this is a link, apply to this, and then after that, say, hey, let me know when interviews start or if interviews are starting or anything like that, and then chances are they're going to reach out via email and say, hey, you have these interviews, let's choose a date, and then from that point forward, it's more the developers that are interviewing you or the hiring managers that are interviewing you that takes it forward. But in between that process of getting that first interview with the developer or the hiring manager, or whichever team that you're trying to interview in the company, um, the recruiter runs the show. And I think it's important to just like build up that relation because my resume isn't as well. My resume is strong because it has that big breadth of stuff, but
right,
it's not as technically like great. It's not as technically great that um it will stand out in the middle of a pile of resumes just based on the tech, right? But it's because of the whole
right.
experiences that I was telling you before. So um I just build that relationship to them, and that's their incentive. Because I have a brand, because people commenting on my stuff say, "Oh, this guy must be known somewhere." So
So the structure is recruiter and building that relationship, and then them driving you through the pipeline to the hiring manager and the interviewing team,
yeah.
and then who gets back to you? The recruiter?
So based on so usually these companies, so like let's say you did 2 3 interviews, they have a process. You can talk to somebody. So this is what I do. Say, hey, what's the process of interviewing? Like if I know a developer at a company, say, hey, do you know the process of interviewing? How do they judge?
Mm,
And then chances are each company has a standardized process of how they mark off, like, oh, did this person was this person clear during this interview question? Was this person
mm,
fit for I don't like that question, but anyways, first fit for culture. Um, was the person pushing back negatively when if you caught them doing something um but you because they are judging you on those like criteria are standard um
mm,
depending on how you do like across those 2 or 3 interviews they will judge or come with some scorecard rating, and then the recruiter will decide, okay, um this person, well, the recruiter is told by the hiring manager that those 3 people or the people that interviewed if the person should be going into negotiation for an offer, which is a whole different thing again with the recruiter. So now your recruiter was your friend. Now your recruiter is the person that you're negotiating with, because clearly they spend so much time to try and get you in the company. Then now
mm.
show me that you really want to spend time by compensating me accordingly. So negotiation is the next piece. But during that piece, the developers on the show make sure that you're exceeding the standards through what you think might be the criteria that they're judging you on. And there's a good book that kind of goes into this. Let me just plug it right now. That I read just to hear like see the multiple of the different interviewing experiences that are there at different companies. It's called
Mm.
Cracking the Coding Interview. It talks about the process of like Amazon, Microsoft, Google, all of those companies. So
So the hiring manager tells you yes or no, and then the recruiter reaches back out to you to
yeah, well,
negotiate
tells the recruiter like they made the decision internally, and then it comes,
back to the
and it,
recruiter.
yeah, and the recruiter reaches out to you and say, hey, we're excited to give you an offer for this, blah 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 blah, and then never take the first offer. Make sure you negotiate, because they won't want to waste the time for all this time, so they probably will give you more stock awards or equity or salary, but yeah, make sure you negotiate,
And I
because
guess that, yeah, go ahead, finish your thought.
once you're in the interview pipeline, that means that they were willing to spend some money to try and get you, so they don't want to waste it. So negotiate, negotiate, negotiate. There's a podcast for that as well. that
Yeah,
I'd
plug
like to.
plug that in too.
Yeah,
Oh, damn. Okay, okay. All right. So that making sense. And I guess that's on the positive optimal side. And I guess the rejection piece on the flip side comes in the form of the recruiter just letting you know, hey,
yeah,
this not gonna work out.
Yeah, man.
Huh.
Should like sometime the next day, I'm just like, oh, sorry, where I have gotten so much of these email. If I look in my email and type, we regret to inform, just it's about 12 or 30. Like it just come because as I said, it's that year, 2018 summer when I was looking for the 2018 summer jobs. Um, yeah, it was so many of those. Like we regret, and it just become like a trigger word for you or a trigger phrase. I said, I know, but yeah. At the end of the day, and there are tools to put you in front of the companies. Like I use this thing called Jopwell. They try to get racialized folks and other marginalized communities to, because if you can't get into recruiters, you have to use the tools that are working as a middle person. I call it Tinder for getting companies, getting into
Mm,
companies, where they
we say
serve.
in Babwell, it's for everybody.
Yeah, so Jopwell. I'm not sure if well nobody know. Kira, I think. Yeah. Um, Anyways, job well. Big
Mm,
commitment to diversity and inclusion in the workplace. So what happened is that if you apply through the platform, they have people hired that will reach out to the company to try and get your resume up in the company's
in
pool.
the on the
So
list. Yeah.
at that time, I didn't really have a lot of. I think during the first batch of me applying and getting rejected is what a lot of it was through Dropwell. Um, and there's one called Jumpstart as well, which is like literally messaging. That one was kind of weird because it was like a recruiter just messaging you, and it's all startups. So if you're a
Mm.
big startup fan, use Jumpstart. But you have to have the visa, and they don't really help you get a visa. I'm a Jamaican, so I couldn't get visa. Um,
Is that why you chose
but
big
yeah.
tech instead of like opted for big tech instead of I guess smaller startups? Solely because of the visa issue?
Um, I wouldn't say I was any one of them that came first, but like the point is that like the smaller tech company is not going to try and help you through the process to get the sponsorship as much
Mm-hmm.
because their thing is to try and get like as much persons coming in or good people coming in that come in as quickly as possible. So while a
Yeah.
Microsoft will have like satellite offices in different areas that they say, okay, you start there and then you come over when you get your H-1B
And
visa.
transition, yeah.
Um, a lot of small tech companies don't have the resources to do that.
Mm,
So that's why I was looking mostly at big, the bigger, like the big names. And so I use Jopwell to try and, get in front of those names. Spotify, Goldman Sachs, and all of those people use them. So, and the thing is that it's like a central platform um, where you could see the companies that you applied for and
mm-hmm.
see the status of, oh, if they check or did a recruiter reach out to you yet, that so that they're doing the tracking like on their back end to say, oh,
Oh,
okay, if a recruiter don't reach out, that they're going to bug the recruiter, stuff like that, because they have recruiting partners in the company. So that's how I got a lot of interviews and a lot of rejections.
I guess the recruiters from Jockwell get in touch with recruiters from the other companies
Yeah, the
themselves
middle person
and
from
kind
Japan,
of
yeah.
they nudge. Oh, okay, wow,
So that's a
interesting.
whole different business model that I've never seen
Yeah.
before. And I think how did I know about it? I don't remember how I know about it. I just somebody tell me because I've been always an advocate like okay reach out to recruiters and I say oh yeah how about a recruiter reach out to a recruiter for you too and I say oh cool what is that Japwell cool and I use it and then um, for each part of the interviewing cycle, like there's stuff and tools to help you. So when it comes like so that's the first piece. There's also the piece around actual interviewing
Mm-hmm.
that I also use. Like a lot of people can't do this, right? Conversation and like have a conversation flowing and stuff like that. So there are tools there to help you interview
Mm-hmm.
online. So like interviewing.io. Um, that's what it's called. I don't remember. Um, Live coding interview practice where me and you would be practicing together because you are somebody that's also looking for a job.
Yeah.
I am somebody that's looking for a job. So you role play as an interviewer and I role play as an interviewee and then it switch. I role play as an interviewer and you role play as an interviewee. So like those are the tools that I use to practice. So
Mm-hmm.
that's on the application side or the interview side. And then reading
Uh,
the books to see if I know like the actual coding questions. Lead code.
Mm-hmm.
If people are familiar with lead code, because those are the type of questions that you get in all interviews anyway. So.
I think things. I mean, you mentioned. I mean, we talked about, I guess, getting into startups as opposed to, I guess, the differences between the startups and big tech. Read the visa situation, but like no is a bit more. I think no is a bit more flexible. I guess coincidental because of the pandemic. So like I know that startups are they won't say like, hey, we're actively taking like international applicants, but they're not opposed to. It's just that like they don't have the resources to, I guess, reach out or like put out ads in that area. Like they're not super invested in I guess international borders. And automatically they already assume that you're not in the time zone. Cause they don't really look at the Caribbean like that. It's really
Hmm.
tourism. They already assume that you're like probably from India if you're applying as an international
Right,
or
right,
like
right.
somewhere in Asia. But yeah, that definitely makes sense. Are there any like so I know that you did. I know that it seemed like you did like a progression, not just jumping straight into a full-time role. Like, talk to me about, I guess, the mechanism or the reasoning behind doing the internships first to then use that as leverage, and probably some other related activities within, like, whatever big tech ecosystem had to offer to get to the actual full-time position.
Right. I think it's easier for a company to give somebody a return offer than for somebody to apply and having to go through the interview process all over again.
Mm,
So as a result, I decided that I wanted to do internships because one, it give me um, extra, well, as you said, leverage, in comparison to somebody who just do school.
mm,
And what, yeah, I decided to do it that way because of that. All right. Um, Projects are really good, but internship and actual work experience at different companies is much better.
mm,
So when in absence of internship, I put projects on my resume, but when I have
right.
internship, I put internship on my resume. So that's the only difference really. And but the big thing is that it can speak about like, hey, not only did I do this project, but I worked at this company doing a project. Like usually it's a project or feature. So it's the same thing, but at a company, and that gives you like uh, um, um, an extra benefit in comparison to others, right? So that's the
Mm,
only reason why I did an internship. And the other reason was that I get paid. I'm sorry,
yeah.
like my I don't know how much did I pay? I was paying like four grand per semester for tuition and um the summer small internship, but 3 5 pay off one semester worth of tuition, right? So
Yeah.
I didn't have to take student loan for that time, so like that helps. And then when you look at a Microsoft internship, whatever 6 grand or whatever, that pay
Yeah.
off 2 semesters worth of tuition. So because you have to take student loan because not the money, so that was my experience. So that's why like the money and just the edge up in comparison to other students.
You know about the work. You're familiar with the work and travel program, yeah?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna go UE for 1 year,
Oh yeah. I
Yeah,
keep forgetting. Like it wasn't like a
if you wanna want to
right.
clear code. Yeah, man. So I'm gonna go UE for a year. Shellings. Oh gosh. Anyways, go UE for a year. I try to get the scholarship, not academic scholarship, cricket scholarship, because I mean, play cricket for UE.
Yeah.
Well, half scholarship because I couldn't get like full scholarship. Apparently I'm never good. Anyways, I tried to get the half scholarship to play for UE, and then like halfway through, I found out that my brother's sponsorship when start really years and years ago come true.
Mhm.
So that's how I apply for the university in Canada, like half like the on the deadline essentially, and then that's how I came here. But work and travel, yeah, I'm bridging them work on it.
Yeah. So like usually from what I mean, because I clearly never go UA, but usually from my understanding is that like you sign up with a company and then like you have to apply for some just random job anywhere in the US from what I remember. But I don't think like the tech route has like really been explored as much. And so one idea and thought that I've been having, because I've been speaking to a few, at least the startup companies are more or less on board, and so they would be open to like taking up interns as long as they had their papers. So as long
Right.
as you like get is what the H1B1 or something like that, some H1 visa,
So like swine
some
flu.
visa,
But now
some
J1 visa. J1 visa is a
J1.
student visa that people can get. And I think there's another one that if you go school in the US, but J1 visa, I think you can get it from different like outside the country and come. That's what I worked on the first
Yeah.
time. And then
Mm,
through that, if you get a return offer, they'll apply for your H1B before. But I know Harris is here like, but there's a it's rough. It's rough to get your H1B. But a easy route in first is that J1 visa.
mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I know. I'd probably suggest that, I guess once the Rona lift up, and people start traveling back and forth and them start doing internships in person, that's like probably one of the better roads if you're going to take up
popcorn
that.
mother. Not joking. Sorry.
No,
It's
no, but
Rona.
the J1 route is definitely probably a better in with some of the smaller startups. Because if you're already getting on the work, if you're already committed to the work and travel, might as well dive deeper into tech and start applying for some of the startup companies.
Right.
Because yeah, on
And the
average,
process is the same, right? Because again,
yeah,
like the process is the same. Once you can go to America for an interview, if you can't ever go to America for an interview, one thing that Corona do is allow people to do interview online,
exactly.
right? So the hacker rank that as I put in the chat, lead code, Cora, and then hacker rank, which is the literal like platform that you can actually test the answers on. Um, you get to see exactly what the companies are doing, right? So or
Mm,
questions that they're asking. So
exactly. You
um,
talked about
good way.
you talked about like the I guess the many failures before before actually getting the internship. What you think, is there like a common theme along all of them as to why you think you never get through?
Um, I would say, how would I break it down? I'd say I wasn't able, like some of the profession, like there's one interview that I did, I think the LinkedIn one,
Mm-hmm.
where I wasn't as versed on the web dev stuff that they were asking. I'm still not as versed. Anyways, I was with the web dev stuff that they were asking, because they were asking a lot of detail on like how certain tags on HTML or JavaScript, like explicitly, like what kind of how was some framework crap, some Angular specific stuff, and I didn't really
Uh,
know it. I was like, bro, this is the only interview this happened to me. Like, what the hell? Because usually it's just the normal data structures and algorithm question, and they ask me something specific about the language or about the framework, and that just blindsided me. With Google, that like interview went so well, and then they asked me some graph question, some
uh,
and I was like, try bull my way through. It never worked. Um, some company I had like a good answer, good everything, but the vibe wasn't right. I just never had the interview and me never had the good meshing, I think.
yeah.
So I feel like maybe I got docked on the, but as our speculation, docked on the um, behavioral questions. Because you have the interview question, well, all of them are interview questions. You have the technical question and then the behavioral question, and
Mm,
both of them matter. So I think some of them that happen. So it's like different stuff, but you can know after the interview, and some of the time it just come down to look like the Microsoft one. Um, four questions that the three of the four questions I saw already, but it's a variation of the previous practice.
mm,
One of them, the guy basically lectured me, but we just had a good. relationship, thought-provoking way how to go through the solution because I never know the solution. Some bit manipulation stuff, and I'm like, what the hell is
Uh,
happening? But it was very interactive, and I showed that whatever because I answered the first question really well, and then I went into that question, and they basically ended up teaching me how to do the answer. But we say, oh, how could you do this? How could I think it was just for fun? I don't know what happened. Anyways, four interviewers really liked me, and that was just luck, right? So, in my opinion, it's just opportunity. Some I don't know who love quotes, but some opportunity, and the practice come together, and you get the job. So, um, a little bit of opportunity, a little bit of luck, and then the practice really gives you an edge up in comparison to everybody else. So, um, but at the end of the day, your luck increases if you practice more and if you get more opportunities. So, um, but yeah, those there wasn't necessarily one set theme, but we know of certain things that you'd normally get docked on that you should have like understanding of, right? So
mm,
for example, if you're at like I usually break down my interview into like a resume scan. Like if you have a resume scan, meaning something that if somebody look at your resume for 8 seconds, you can just have like a spiel on each of them. So they'll if they pick something, you can just talk about each of them. So yeah, the first thing is like the general thing. Tell me about yourself, favorite project that you worked on or most proud of. Um, a time that you went through a failure. Make sure you can
right.
talk about those questions on each of the resume projects or activity that you did. Weakness, like what was a weakness that you had when it comes to this project, and how did you what did you do to mitigate, or if it was a group project, um, help make somebody help you mitigate that weakness. What was one of the strengths that you had generally or with each of those projects? So, and then when it comes to if you have a company on your resume, how was your time at the company? What was the most difficult problem that you faced, if you're okay to share? What was the
Mm,
development process like? Some of those stuff can really tell if you know what you're talking about. And chances are sometimes you don't even know what you're talking about, but you know generally what you did, so you can have a good explanation around it. Because you worked at the company before. But a 4 month internship doesn't mean that you're gonna know everything. Or like I've been for Microsoft for like or whatever months now,
mm,
and there's so much to do. But I can't tell you the technology that they're using, the project tracking software that they're using, what the app that we're working on is, what my part of the contribution is, but I still don't understand the full architecture because it's too much. But I can express those stuff, at least the good stuff, in an interview, which is something that, if it's on your resume, it's fair game for them to ask you. So know everything that's on your resume. If not,
right.
it don't make any sense,
Mm,
right? I
that
think
makes
I put once upon a time I put my friends. I don't know if you know Damien Dunn from Arden.
of course.
Yeah, yeah, man. So he had this app. It was a domino app, and he helped.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. I remember the domino game
yeah, man.
back in the
Jamaican
days,
style
but
dominoes is what it's called, and he had it, and I think I helped him with just one function, and I never know not know what it what something do. I'm put it first, and then we realized that wait, if this didn't come, nobody can't answer it, right? Because him know the architecture, know everything, so I'm not gonna put it on it anymore. So that's something that you have to be careful of. You're a part of a project, but make sure you know how to talk about it. Because if you don't, somebody ask you, you're gonna get blindsided, and then you look like crap. Um, so I know everything. The next piece I usually do is like the general behavioral question around like if somebody asks you why you want to work here, make sure you have some answer for that. Um, Good places to look is their annual report. Look at their developer conference. Look at that newspaper article or website, employee reference, and use something that you did some research on before and tie it to your experiences and show that you have passion to work there. So if you never read
mm,
nothing, if you never know nothing before, um, if you do the research, then you can tie something. So like, let's say for instance, give me an example. Um, some AI thing, right? So you can look up that Google did this AI conference and you attended it. because you see that it was like a month before the interview that you had, and say, "Oh yeah, I went to this AI conference. It was really good," and whatever, whatever. And one of the main things that really stood out to me was how ethical you guys are when it comes to this specific thing. Well, we know where their issue with ethics now, and black women, but um,
You're talking about Timnit.
yeah.
Are we allowed to say that?
And so, like, let's say for instance, that's your reason. Then you in that interview process, you say, "Yo, um, yeah, that's the reason that reached that really touched your heart, and this is why you're passionate, and this is the type of thing that I did in school that the link with that, and that's the reason why I want to work at the company." Another thing is like revenues, or just use something that's out there public,
Mm,
or even better, if you know somebody at the company, invoke that knowledge that
right.
the hiring manager in sales that work on implementing some new CRM that you have knowledge of. That's something that, oh shoot, the interviewer might say, oh, that's cool. Like nobody else comes and tell me that. So like those things you can differentiate yourself with.
Yeah, as you touch on that, I want to get into some nuance of, I guess, a behavioral piece and tactics of like getting through the door. So well, we know that in the space, in the tech ecosystem right now, we still have um there's like probably about 1% or less than 1% of like black hires in all of these big tech, and in general, not just big tech, but generally, about 1% or less that are actually hired and stay in the company, that is. Do you think that works to our favor as like black people like right now? And what are the, I guess, the complications with that? And I guess secondly, like what other types of alignment pieces that you probably think about? Somebody mentioned actually to me privately, like on your LinkedIn you have your preferred pronouns like him and his and he.
Hmm.
So yeah, just like walk me through like the reasoning and how that fits into, I guess, the social narrative right now.
Right. So when you look at companies, they are all pushing for diversity, inclusion, equity.
Mm,
And as a black person, um, you have the lived experiences of what brought these things forward. The people never came up and came in with the EDI initiatives just because they want to. They came because there was a lot of, like, if maybe like 10 or 20 black employees come and they started complaining or started having an issue with something that the company is doing, right? And they know because of that pushback, they come with these initiatives. They say, okay, we need to increase representation, inclusivity, and make things more equitable for black folks because it is a reality. These
yeah,
companies don't, like, they're not representative, and they're not really empowering folks. No, we've seen leadership teams of various companies that are trying to push to make sure that this happens, right? And one thing that I have done in my interviews is talk about my experiences, right? Talk about the fact that I've been trying to get, black folks into STEM, talk about the work that I've been doing for Black Boys Code. I
mm.
even talk about Yard Code. We started this thing
Oh
in
yeah,
like the Yard Code free code camp tutorials. That Nuranda is here, so shout out to Nuranda and the other folks here. We used to do Yard Code. We would just come up on a Sunday and just start do the free code camp. Free code camp is an online tool that you can just go through questions that just basically teach you everything about web development, and that's something that I invoke in those interviews to show that, like, I am in line with the diversity, inclusion, and equity mandate. Something like him, his pronouns.
mm,
There are a lot of trans and non-binary folks, and um, putting that there is something that helps to show that, like, you're normalizing the fact that the gender relations aren't binary, right?
right,
So it's something like that that really kind of shows that you're inclusive, but also normalizes certain stuff where in another context it's not normalized. Because if a trans folk come in, like, maybe 10 years ago in a company, they'll get all the ridicule or whatever. But if you recognize that they're still a human, and if they're saying that, okay, use they them pronouns, then you put that he him his is a pronoun that you might be using, but as somebody that looks like me somewhere else might not be using that similar pronoun, right? So that's something that, it's called misgendering. Somebody can see somebody that seem male identifying, but then that's not their pronoun that they use. And this is the kind of context that in these companies, when you're doing interviews, you have to make sure that you're aware of. And
Mm,
basically that you are also going to create a work environment that's safe and equitable for everybody, regardless of the race, the gender, sexuality, all of that stuff.
right. That makes
Yeah.
sense. Switching into, I guess, the more tactical, technical parts of the interview now. Like, what are some like general recurring questions and along certain themes that are probably definitely more than likely going to show up for all interviews?
Right before we do that, let me talk about one more that is really, really important in the behavioral side:
Oh yeah.
conflict. How you relieve blockers. So how do you relieve a blocker that you had when it comes to conflict on the team? Sometimes they ask you
Mm,
these questions, and the worst thing you don't want to do is shit on somebody that you worked with before. Um,
yeah.
the thing is that you want to show that you came, you saw a problem, you had the team talk about it, and then you guys decided that okay, this person may not have been pulling their weight as appropriately, but you guys set the communication guidelines so that everybody can equitably push forward the project. That's a way how you show that you have leadership, you have teamwork, and you do something. But if you go and say, "Oh, my teammate wasn't doing anything at all, but I took up his work and I did everything and it was perfect," then somebody was like, "Oh, okay, this person is a very arrogant type of thing." So I just wanted to really talk about the conflict piece, because that is very important that you show how to anger that type of conflict stuff. But when it comes to the questions, um, around the actual technical piece. Make sure you know how to talk about technologies, languages used, theory, tech stack. Thing you enjoy the most about the project and difficult about the project. It's still kind of behavioral. Relieving blockers and issues, conflict is that piece. But when it comes to know the technical nitty gritty of a question, let's say you have a question around reversing a linked list or reversing an array. An array is a data structure, right? That just for the folks here, we array is a data structure, a list of whatever, integer or string, whatever. You have an array that have multiple stuff that's you name it under one variable. Um, how the how you break it down is basically show that you understand the problem. You show that you can have a conversation around the problem, and meaning the inputs that you're going to be putting into whatever function that you create. Because usually a interview question is, even though it seems like a big question, it's just one function that you're creating or a function that has are calling other functions, right? So it's one big main function, and you're talking about the fact that okay, that maybe probably needs an input or a couple input. You have an output. Be able to talk about the overview of the solution, uh, possible other solutions that you might think are,
Are like probable, but
yeah, probable
not
solution that
not.
it could go by, but like you can differentiate with the preferred solution.
Mm,
And those probable solutions, by like how long it would take if you did it that way, versus the way that I'm doing it, because I'm going to do it in a faster way that is more efficient. Or even on the flip side, you say, hey, this is the more efficient way of doing it, but that will take maybe 2 days of interviewing for me to, like, I usually do those type of jokes in interviews. Like maybe that will take me too long to do that unless you want me to. I know how to do it, but that will probably take me 3 days to do it. But here's another way that I can think about doing it if you want, and then give them the opportunity to tell me which option should I choose, right? Because like, so
oh,
these are some of the ways that I have those conversations in the middle of those tech questions, and then I don't know. I just want to bring my personality and say, "Oh, yeah, that's going to take me 5 years to do that." And I'm like, just a joke, because joking is good. It kind of like a lot of the times these are developers too, meaning that they're not they're the day to day that they do, they're in front of a computer, so some of the times it's even awkward for them. So when you
Mm,
come in with confidence and try to make joke and stuff like that, it also kind of um, put them in
and
a
it
more
puts it at,
comfortable position. Yeah,
uh,
because they might be nervous too. All right. So
yeah, that's a
um,
good point.
yeah, like I always bring that type of vibes in the interview them. So but yeah, possible solution, and then be willing to dive deep into your solution. No, my thing is just speak out loud. If you're going through a question, be able to speak out loud what you're thinking. Don't
Mm.
be looking at it and say, hmm, start right. And the person say, wait, where am I going with this? No, show them where you're going, talk where you're going. And that's a good way to like, kind of just doing the interview so that like if they see you going down a wrong path, you only have 45 minutes, they can stop you. Say, no, 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 maybe not go that way. And
Also, they'll guide you along the way as well.
if you're
If
talking sometime, yeah. Because they can
oh,
see that you're just going down something and say, oh, maybe this developer is a good developer. I don't really want him go down that path because I know that that's wrong.
yeah.
I say, hey, what do you think about like this is what I see some interviews saying, hey, what do you think about going it this way though? And I say, oh, cool. Yeah, that's another way. Let me think for a little bit. Okay, all right, I'll do your way. And it's always like that conversation sometimes that happens in an interview. Yeah, and then be able, when you're finished digging in or going into that thing, kind of walk through how you're testing it. Meaning that you're giving a summation. So okay, yeah, so that was the solution. This is how you flip it, the array. Now I'm going to do run through based on this array. So let's say I have this example. I give an example of an array and say, okay, this is how my algorithm goes through this array and flips it around. Let's do one pass of this, the second pass. These are two cases. One of them which you're doing all negative numbers, and one of them you're doing all positive numbers. So it's like structurally with everything, just think about the big picture, structurally break it down into pieces, and then test it, and then that's it. So I learn how to communicate how I'm doing any question that I'm answering. If I can't communicate it, then chances are I never understand it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you'll know when it comes to the technical question if you did well or not. Um,
That
Even for
makes
the question that you don't know the answer, if you're communicating it well or communicating the process that you're doing well, they might still give you the job.
oh, and give you a pass based on your ability to problem solve on the go. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I think we basically almost out of time, if anything. But we have time for questions and answers. So, people, if you want, you can either like type in the chat, or you can unmute yourselves and let us know what's up. Introduce yourself as well if possible, but you don't need to. Any questions? Anyone? Oh, there we go.
Um,
Oh, Nicholas came late. What was the interview prep process like? Uh,
um,
yeah, you did
so
get. Well, yeah, I guess can I do a little summary then, Gio, if you
mm,
can?
First thing I did, I built up my LinkedIn, went through core concepts like through data structures, algorithms, using a book called Cracking the Coding Interview, applied for jobs, set up my GitHub, maybe a website, finished up my resume. The next thing that I did was apply using a tool called Jobwell, which is like for this AMA, I was just telling my experiences specifically. But yeah, applied using Jobwell or Jumpstart or anything that can connect me with a recruiter, because I believe that just cold applying isn't as successful as connecting with recruiters. So that was a big piece of what I discussed earlier. And then preparing for on-screen interviews or on-site interviews using
Mm,
Leet Code. There's a Quora link that I have here that shows 500 data structures and algorithm answers for 500 questions that are usually asked in interviews. So definitely click that link. And then I did live coding with my friends or anybody that I know that also interviewing, and there's a tool that's called Pramp that teaches you or that makes you role play how to do live coding. So if you do all of that, I believe that it kind of gets you in a groove to start
Mhm.
applying for jobs, as well as getting in front of interviews, and it just becomes practice. Not practice make perfect, but practice increases the luck. So um, you get the job based on the amount of practice that you're putting in. So some people lucky they get the job on the first try.
Mhm.
But yeah, I linked my resume here as well. The last thing before, like about the interview, um, there's always a question that you're supposed to ask back to the interviewer, which is
Right, yeah. We forgot to
yeah,
mention that. Yes.
yeah. So after you sum up the question, you know how to sum up the whole interview. But the last thing is question back to interviewer. Sometimes people say, "Oh no, I don't have any questions." Never ever do that. Never ever ever do that. They sometimes they say, "Oh, they didn't ask me any question." Boom, this person not curious enough. So if you even don't have a question to ask, say, "Hey, what are some of the interesting developments that you are doing now that you're working on at the company?" That's an easy question to ask. Um, Everybody who knows that they're supposed to ask a question will ask that question. However, there's another way how you can say, "Hey, from my research looking at this, I see that your team that you were talking about does this. How does
Mm.
this technology work with this specific thing that your team working on?" That's a great question for anybody. They'll be like, "What the hell? How do you know all of this?" Anyways, that's so cool. And one thing with developers, or at least the ones here, they like talking about the tech stuff, the actual technical details of the stuff that they're doing. Um, that's a good question to, like, make them be able to like actually talk back to you, not just asking you questions. So that's something that really cool. And then maybe the day-to-day question: what do you do on a day-to-day? That's a question, but always ask our questions back. But yeah, um,
Mm.
that's it.
Brandon asks, what's the most annoying but useful data structure that are asked for in interviews? He said you usually hear people speak about trees and maps.
Useful data structure that are asked for an interview, like I would say
Useful but annoying.
graphs are really good. Graphing, like algorithms, are really good algorithms, that they're, if you have the knowledge of one of them, you look like a nice smarty pants. Like it's just a good question that you usually get, or they graph questions are just good questions. However, it's really hard to explain, not explain, but really hard to like write out in an interview. So those are really really hard questions to do. Like, like somebody asking a minimum spanning tree question, those are not as bad to have a conversation about, but to code it is really difficult in an interview. So they're useful, but annoying, very annoying. And as you see, that's one of the interview questions that I failed on in the past. So
Right, yeah.
as I talked about earlier. But yeah, Graph. How often are dynamic questions asked? So the question that I was talking about earlier too, about the person who lectured me after a while
Yeah.
in the interview. So he asked me some question around, convert integer to number, and I killed it. No, sorry, merge two sorted array question before. So you have two sorted arrays, merge them, just like a merge sort type algorithm thing. I don't remember exactly how I did it, but that's the algorithm that I used was the merge sort algorithm. And then I did that well, and he then asked a bit manipulation question. I was like, bruh, like, do you have, it was just hard. But the how he did it was doing some dynamic programming, and he went on about, oh yeah, and this, and actually you can store this in an integer, and all this. It's like, okay, cool, but I've never really gotten those type of questions, and I think he just threw it in there. I don't think it's actually a question. My theory is that he, what was that?
Oh, you know what? It's the dogs.
Oh no, no, I heard something last night. Okay. My my theory is that they just ask that question if you do well on the first one, and they need something hard to like test your communication skills. So, but they're not often asked. Maybe somebody else can tell me. But based on the interviews that I've did, I've never gotten any except that one.
Okay, okay, cool. Any other questions?
And remember that engineering is not the only tech role that's there in these companies. You have a PM role as well. Um, yeah.
Right,
So
yeah. Yeah, I guess just to touch on that a little bit. Typically, I think CS people kind of just streamline themselves into like the two parallels of either the engineer or developer when choosing roles or looking for roles. But you can easily, if you have enough like product experience or like worked on a few projects yourself, you can probably easily apply as a PM, a product manager, or even a project manager, a technical project manager. Or if you like probably been heavily involved in probably community, like for you for instance, you could easily apply as a developer evangelist. So like probably I'd say 60% of your time is dedicated to the community, and maybe 40% of your time is dedicated to coding and helping to build out APIs. What is a developer evangelist? You want to take this one, Gio?
no, you can go ahead.
Yeah, so a developer evangelist is
It's keys.
um so yeah, I mean I've actually worked as a developer evangelist for like a good couple months for this company. And so essentially what the role entails is pretty fun. Essentially what the coding pastor essentially what the role entails is that you spend 60% of the time either interacting with the community, from like going to hackathons, doing demos at hackathons, speaking at schools, doing demos at schools, explaining the API, explaining the SDK to like hundreds of thousands of people, going to different conferences, doing conference talks, speaking to a lot of software engineers on the side, speaking to product managers. You're essentially the face of the company. You're like the technical face of the company when you go outside of the company. So more or less kind of like a quasi CTO role in some respects. And the 40% of the remaining 40% of your time is spent like doing developer work. So you'll probably liaise with whichever product manager who is working on the company's APIs. You probably liaise with them to give them feedback on like things and hearings that they've probably heard from software engineers who probably use the product. And you'll probably help to build different components and modules of the product itself, and then announce it to the community, and go back and forth with getting feedback and making error corrections for the project itself. So yeah, it's pretty fun. You get a lot of swag. Swag meaning like merch. That's what we're calling it now. Swag was like used probably 10 years ago. But you get a lot of merch, and you get to just interact with a whole lot of people internationally, because you can then brand yourself as an influencer on whichever platform. Because remember, you're interfacing with like all the software engineers who use the company's product, and you can use that as leverage to then get into another position at another company, either as a core developer or a product manager or a developer evangelist as well. Or even if you want to go back into the software engineering role, is a very easy step, because usually people always reach out to you, at least from my experience. They usually reach out to you more, if you're like front facing and like the face of whichever product or service that the company is rolling out. So hope that answered your question.
Yeah.
Uh,
So there's a lot of questions around PM that I see. So let me just kick off those two. So PM as in product management. Yeah, some companies call it PM as in product manager, some call it project manager, some call it program manager.
mhm,
Essentially, they're sometimes the same role. Maybe the project manager is a little bit different, but
right,
essentially they're the person who's the go-between between sales or go-between between developers or the developer team, um, and the customers. So they talk to customers a lot about the same features that the developers working on. So this is what a PM. I mean, not, there's some PMs come work with your so there some companies have it like this. There's a PM that's assigned to every single engineering team, that is responsible for a group of features. So they'll be talking with your manager, around the features, through like monthly feature chats to talk about which features should come down the pipeline for the next 3 months. And then they come and say, okay, they're giving specs. Specs is just a document saying that, okay, this is what, like, so it's basically screenshots of how they want the end, whatever to work, like the front, like the UI to work, and I say, okay, make it happen. And then you make it happen. You're on a tight deadline, um, and you work back and forth with the PM to make sure that, the requirements are being held. Sometimes you have to push back because sometimes they want everything. Everything. This feature needs to work every single way and it's perfect. The
Mhm.
customers actually want it, but sometimes it's a trade-off. Is that okay? You want a feature this way, but then the amount of resources or developer resources that it takes to do it is much more than one person with lakhs. So in a month, it probably can that one person can do it in 2 months. So like, it's that person is there to negotiate that, um, as well as to try and make sure that the customer's wants and needs are reflected in the actual developing of the project. Um, and then
Mm.
there's another question around what is the PM role in the interview. Read that book, the second book that I linked in the chat called Cracking the PM Interview. It's similar. Microsoft interns literally have an opportunity to do either engineering or PM. So it's like very, very similar. It's like after you finish the interview, they say, okay, you want to be a PM or engineer? It's like, what? Okay, cool.
Oh, they give you options.
Yeah, I was like, yeah,
Okay.
I'll do the engineering role. That's fine. But it's basically the same process. Maybe they ask you one witty question like, how much ball can you fit in a room? Um, and then you're like, what? What do you mean? But that question is like a typical PM question where they're trying to make you take an abstract idea, break it down, and actually come up with models to build up a product or build up the answer to the problem. So it's problem solving. Okay, how many balls fit in a room? What's the size of the ball? Are we talking cricket ball, basketball? Cool. How big is the room? Okay, divide the amount of spaces in the room. Like, it's, but sometimes people get that and get blindsided. But it's a question that companies ask you just to think about how you think or to hear how you think. But
Yeah.
that's the type of PM stuff because PM is really big picture, breakdown, all of that.
Yeah. Somebody asked about roles in documentation, like technical writers. From my experience, usually, and I always hated this, and I always opted out. Usually developer evangelists or developer advocates or developer relations people, they tend to also sometimes do the technical writing or documentation. But in other, this is also circumstantial. So in other cases, they'll have like a dedicated technical writer as well. And I think it's the same. Yeah, I think once you're doing CS, I think you should have the chops for that as well, if that's like of interest. I don't know if you have like dedicated. I'm assuming you have dedicated technical writers over at Microsoft, right? Like on your team, if anything.
Somebody, well, not on my team, they contract out that work.
Oh, I see, I see, I see. Oh, okay, okay, that makes sense.
And if you mean like, meaning, let's say for instance, there's a product, you mean the public facing
No, no, not
documentation, right?
even. Yeah, yeah. So like API
Okay, yeah.
documentation and SDK documentation.
So we'd write that like within our company or within our,
Oh,
like the architecture, we have it, we write it, while we're developing a product, but then they prettify and actually like make it sound, consumable to the public.
oh, I see, I see. Okay.
But that's like that the engineering teams don't do that. Like people good in English can do that. So I think they do contract it out though. Somebody asked about Jamaican citizenship, giving any friction in tech companies. What do you mean? Meaning the accent, being a
With
Jamaican, or the actual citizenship? So
the
I've been in a
passport.
lucky situation recently. I remember I came here in 2015. Canada is not US, meaning Canada is easy to get citizenship. So I'm now a citizen as of February 29, 2020,
Hmm.
right, last year. So right after that, yeah, there was a big change, and here how the change works. Before becoming a Canadian, being just a Jamaican,
Hmm.
I would have to work 40 grand less because I'm working in Canada versus in US, I work 40 grand more because I have Canadian citizenship, which is so weird, but it's all due to the immigration process in America that's so messed up. And the only way you really can get out of it is if the laws change. But under this
Hmm.
Senate, and I know about politics as well. Under this Senate and and the House, that the immigration legislation will never change. So um, let's wait until maybe 8 years when some radical runs. So, but that won't happen under the moderate president that happens now. But Canada has a easy way to. Let me just talk about the detail essentially. Essentially, if you're in Canada as a student, you can get the postgraduate work permit, and after 3 years, you can apply for, well, after a year, you can apply for permanent resident, which is the green card equivalent, and after 2 years after that, you can become a citizen. So
Hmm.
it's maximum 6 years, and if you have 4 years in school, so 3 years after school, you can become a citizen of another country, which is kind of weird or cool, I guess, whichever way you want to look at it. But in Canada, in the US, as a if you're trying to get US job as a Jamaican citizen, it's very hard because you have to get a visa called a H-1B visa, and they have a limited amount that they give per per year. I don't remember the amount, but some
Yeah.
people lucky. Um, but again, get that internship first, and they'll try to sponsor you. But the internship is easier because it's just a J1 visa, and they don't care where you come from.
You know what? I don't know if you know. I don't know if Javon told you about like his
I'm
rigmarole
automatic.
process. No, not even Apple. How how
Oh,
he yeah, yeah.
that's why
So
I
the
came to
way
Vancouver. Yeah, I met
yeah,
him here.
I know, me know.
Yeah.
But like the way how Javon's situation was set up. And I think we had a developer meetup like probably 2019 when we talked about it. But the way how his situation was set up is that he was a Jamaican citizen, and so he applied to Apple, and so he got through. But you know the way how the H1 the visa situation set up is that you have to like wait cycles to see if you like get through some weird bias lottery. So Apple's workaround, and I'm assuming this is like across the board for a few companies as well, especially in big tech, is that they'd like put it in Canada, give you the work permit, and then you like work as long as like they have an office or like a setup, a remote setup, if anything, they can put it there. You work at that office or you work remotely in like Canada, and you
Mm,
just wait. You just wait till the US bus you and then fly you over. But
yeah.
like that's like another, I guess, immigration trick too that some of these companies
So that's
use.
exactly the one I was telling you about. Prior to February, they wanted
Mm,
to make me work in Vancouver. They pay you much less. But after getting Canadian citizenship, I was able to work in America, so that the pay is higher. They do it based on this thing called cost of market labor, whatever. Depend on how much developers cost on average in that area. That's what they pay you. So if
mm,
everybody's paying you less, even though you're doing the same job, you get paid way less. So that's what happened in Vancouver because Vancouver have like three big companies,
mm,
and mostly other local Vancouver company that pays in Canadian dollars. So, um,
right.
and it's a bit different as a Jamaican versus a Canadian. And I'm a Jamaican. Nobody can take I'm Jamaican. Yes, as you see on my flag. Um, but yeah, I got that citizenship luckily, so that made the process easier. Just to answer the question.
Mm,
Is it possible to land a job directly as PM after university? Yeah, just similar process as engineer, so you can.
cool. Any other questions? Nope. I guess going once, twice. All right. I guess that's it. But Gio, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. We I'm sure everybody here learned a lot. I even learned some more too. But I think as we become more generally remote, I'm hoping that like a lot of these opportunities, especially in the US and Canada, that can open up for us since we are going to be stuck here for a hot bit. And I hope that people like use all the resources that that you just gave us. I think you also put in a document. You say was going to share a document. I mean, you can put that in the comments later if anything.
Yeah, I
Uh,
did share it earlier.
Great. Oh, O'Shane. Yeah, O'Shane has a question.
Okay,
O'Shane?
so can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Uh, anyone?
I'm
So,
more
all
to.
right. Good day. So this is a question geared towards you, especially giving advice for people probably just starting in tech that may be on the call, as well as building out your you just starting tech and building yourself, building out your portfolio, as well as any decisions that you think they should make to position themselves to get ready to dive into the tech world, the tech job, and be able to apply for remote work at these big companies. What are your general advice for those new beginners in tech?
Cool.
Mm.
I'll tell you a little bit about my experience when it come to that specifically. When before prior right before I started applying for job, I never know how to do a project. I did all this school. I never know how to do a project. UE known for that. Them just you do a one course or class, or you do for maybe move a ball on the screen and then that's it. You
Yeah.
think done, right? But my advice is in order to get confidence for know say yo you can work for a company, go to one YouTube tutorial on a project end to end, and you have the knowledge to do a project, right? And my thing is that the fact that they're not teaching this in school is just messy because it's so accessible, but people don't know how to even start doing a project. So my thing, get a project done on their belt. On my resume, I always think about like one small project and one big project. A big project is anything that I consider to take more than a month and has multiple people working on it. If it's you alone working on it, it will take 2 months. A small project is something, a 10-hour tutorial on YouTube showing you how to do, build a website, for example, with a database setup, with some front end, with some back end, meaning that something that's calling the data from the database and treating it dynamically. If you know how to do that, that's half of all of the jobs that's ever in tech. So that means you can do the tech. If you can do that 10-hour tutorial, that means you can work in tech. Two,
Mm.
the data structure and algorithm questions, like, just start getting familiar with some of them. The anagrams question come in 20% of interviews. Anagrams is a question that basically, um, yeah, anagrams like a string, two string anagrams. It's in a document that I had. But data structures, do a project, and that's the way to really start getting comfortable to like start doing interviews and stuff like that. Don't spend too much time before you start applying for stuff because nobody truly in like everybody has in tech has imposter syndrome. Everybody think that they're not good enough, and they the sooner you realize that, oh, everything is just half of the time that you're doing the work, you're googling it anyways. Um, soon as you realize that tech is about like trying to figure out how to do stuff and reading documentation, the sooner you realize that, okay, I can do this thing. It's very easy. Um, but yeah, do a quick project, do the data structure stuff, and then from that, start applying, start building up your LinkedIn. But yeah, I kind of went through that, yeah, like my pipeline essentially. But that's an easy way how to get ahead of everybody else because everybody else in UA, UTech, everywhere, they're doing the courses too. I know Key's a one school man, but it's fine to have school, but make sure that if you have school, you have a leg up through the projects that you're doing. What happened is that enough people at the school, them don't do no project. and then enough money to the project, don't do no school. But if you have both, then you're good to go. But that's my big advice. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. Okay. Any last uh, any last minute questions? Or actually, let me check the. Oh, somebody was commenting. Yeah. So any last minute questions that want to pop in? Now is the time. Other than that, Gio, you have any parting words? And I guess you can plug all your socials as well.
Yeah, mama, drop them. Giovanni HoSang on Instagram. Resident DJ Dappa Dan. Ex-cricketer, everything. But yeah, Giovanni HoSang on IG, Twitter. Um, I think my Facebook can't accept more, but like send me a request on Facebook and anything, and then LinkedIn.
LinkedIn.
I'm always willing to do a quick call to talk to anybody and stuff like that. I'm really willing to have this kind of just the message just said that yo we meet here because a lot just so that I know at what Facebook developer circle and stuff, yeah. So
Mm.
outside of that I don't really have much. If we were doing yard code I'd come and do it as a part of the developer circle, but nobody had the time for it anymore. So um yeah, let me actually link yard code as a plug.
Oh yeah,
uh,
drop it.
so this is something that we were doing. um, so there's this free code camp thing on Facebook. If people want to revive that, if people want to do like, you know, free code camp tutorials with other people doing stuff. I don't know if you want you can incorporate it here, but free code camp is just like a code along type of thing that teaches you how
Yeah.
to do HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then after that, they teach you some algorithm question, and then I teach you a framework like Angular or what's another one? Gosh, what's my brain? What will I use for the UI Microsoft? The other big JavaScript, the one that Facebook make.
Oh, wait.
React.
React, right?
React. Yes.
Yeah.
Use
So
that.
like the teacher for use React for free code camp, so you can just follow along. Then if people want, I can give you the YouTube account for the yard code, and we just have people coding on Zoom on yard code if you want. And cool.
Cool. Yeah. I guess on that note though, I mean, we're going to do a big community announcement later, but Facebook is like heading in the direction of the community building products more. So this will come in handy. And yeah, if it's the more we need to get into the habit of like building products and churning out projects and completing them. And so yeah, Facebook is heading in that direction. So you'll be seeing a lot more resources being dropped in the Facebook group generally for people to take advantage of. So that's it, guys. Thank you so much again, Jill. Really appreciate it.
Respect,
Yeah.
respect. Arden,
Um,
big up. See a
Optimal.
couple of Arden one here, I thank everybody
Uh,
for having me.
yeah. Thanks again, everyone. We'll see you all next month. Yeah. All right. Bye now.
Take care. Yo, if you play a soca song for come off.
You have
Pick
the
a
soda
song.
song?
Yo, let me pull it up, man. I'm telling you, I'm a DJ now, brother. I'm serious.
I mean, I think we can play more than 15 seconds because of copyright, but
No,
what's it?
man. Soca no, no have no
The
copyright
regulated.
infringement on them thing. Pick a side. All ready to go. All ready. I don't feel hard, I jump. You better pick a side. This side of fire, this side of energy. Yeah, man, we're live, we're live. Anyways, big up yourself, G.
All right.
Take
Later,
care,
guys.
everybody. Much love.